So welcome everyone to the Tropical Wave Painting. This is sponsored by Warminster Library, the Friends of Warminster Library. I'm so grateful for those that are new. We usually have these classes the first and third Monday of each month with Warminster. The only time we won't be doing that is October because my husband and I are going to Italy. So we're very excited about that. So it will happen the first week of October. But again, it's in my newsletter. If you don't get my newsletter, I can post my email at the end of this, and you can write me to say, please add me to the newsletter. A new one will be coming out tomorrow as well for next week. We don't have any more classes this week, but our regular class schedule starts next week. Okay, so we're going to be doing this tropical wave painting. Again, we have 6 colors. If you want to have green and purple, if you have those with you, you are welcome to put those, have those available. I create art kits for the libraries, and so what we sometimes do is just mix the colors. But if you have those colors handy, please get those. So that would be green and purple if you have them. If not, we will just mix them with our primary colors here. So I'm going to move the painting up top so you can see my blank canvas. Also, my 9x12 is on its side, so it's landscape mode, so that the longer side is down here. Also, I think I need to fix my camera just a little bit so you can see the bottom of my canvas. There we are. Okay, so we're going to get started with the drawing, and it is a very simple drawing. And most of what we do is with paint. And this one's a fun one because we have some texture happening, just again using our brush, but it's fun to kind of do the texture of the wave. I think it's also a really nice Sabrina, the adult librarian. I'm really happy she picked this one for the end of summer. I feel like this is a good end of summer painting. All right, so let me just, there we go. All right, so we are going to start off first with the background. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing straight across, but stopping halfway in between our canvas so that we can then create the shape of the big wave that is right in front of us. So we're going to come down from the top of our page or canvas, and we're going to go more than halfway down. So probably about, let me turn my, there we go, probably about right here. Okay. And then we're going to go straight across, like I said, maybe to about here. It's about halfway across. And then we're going to be drawing in our little mountains in the back that have our palm trees on them. It's kind of like our island, right? So we've got like 2 sections, kind of look like pyramids. That's what my husband said. And I have to agree. Let me get the light a little more on that. Okay. And then we're going to just paint in the palm trees. So we're not going to worry about the palm trees right now. So next, we're going to just draw in that big wave, and then we're ready to paint. So we're going to start at the bottom left corner of our canvas, and we're going to curl, curl that wave upward, to about meet where we stopped drawing over here. And you're going to do a really big curve. So you can see I started to kind of curve a little bit too close to that. You're not going to curve until you almost get up to the top of your canvas here, and then you're going to curve around. Going to make like a curly Q for the wave. And you want to do this lightly when you're drawing it. I mean, we'll be painting over it, but and that's it. So if you want to, take a look at that wave and fix it any way you need to. Just want to look at my opening here. You want to make sure that your opening is, big enough, the opening between the wave and your landscape back there, but it should be. And that's pretty much the drawing part because we're going to be creating everything with paint. We're going to be creating all those lovely various blues that you see in the water. But first, we're going to be starting off with our landscape, or actually our sky. So, double check, make sure you like how everything is drawn. And now we're going to get started, and we're going to start off with our red paint. And I suggest using your flat brush. So the flat brush should be your bigger brush, right? It's sort of flat across the top. I actually have a filbert, which is a little bit pointy up here, but it'll do the same thing. And then this is your round brush. It's more pointed. My flat brush is a size 8. So somewhere between a size 5 to 8. Again, it always depends on the company, but you want a sort of a medium to big brush because you want to be able to get into the background. And then also you want to be able to, kind of flip it on its side and use the detail in the brush. If you have more than 2 brushes available, which most people do, you can add a third brush, which would be a little bigger than this. It would be maybe, let's see, let me grab another size here. This is a really big one. This one, my gosh, see, isn't this funny? This one says it's a 3/4, but it's by a different company. Isn't that strange, right? I'm thinking this would probably be close to a 10, an 8 to a 10. So if you have something like that, you can go faster with the background, but you don't have to. So that's just, if you want to. But I'm just going to be using 2 brushes here. All right, so we're gonna get started. I like to dip my brush in a little bit of water just to kind of get it a little wet, and then I kind of tap it on my paper towel just to give it a little bit of some wetness. And then I'm gonna start off. We're gonna use our red, and basically what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be creating um, a sunscape from top to bottom. Now, what I like to do is I like to start off with the red at the top. Now, you're going to have to, very carefully go around your wave. So you may want to use a little bit of paint to sort of almost like, when you use like a marker to kind of, um, you know, draw out where you're supposed to stop on the pencil. Kind of like to do that with the paint. So we're going to start off with our red, and there is a little bit of red right underneath the wave. Now, depending on where your wave is showing. I also like to extend the color down farther than where it's actually going to just show the red, because the great thing about doing a landscape like this is that you want to make sure the paint is still wet when you're painting all of the colors, right after, because the colors in between, 2 colors, will mix and it will give it that gradient effect. And so we paint a little bit downward, a little more, using a little more red, a little further down, like so. And see, we're going to start to put orange on top. So what you want to do is, once you have your red down, get it down to about here. And then you're going to rinse your brush because we're going to start adding in the orange. I hope everybody's had a nice summer. Um, I feel like I was telling Liz, I've been technically off for 2 weeks, not completely off. I work a part-time day job as well, and then um, you know, I was finishing up fall stuff and invoices and still kind of doing that. But I feel like it went really fast. Oh, and like today went really fast. Like, back to everything tomorrow. So when you have your brush all washed out from the red, you then want to load up your brush with orange. And basically what you're going to be doing is we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to start at the line where we created the red, and you're going to paint about uh, maybe 3 inches of that, because again, you're going to be going lower down, a little lower, for you to add your yellow in next. But we're going to paint, the pure orange in those spaces. I'm going to go a little bit further down with my orange, because what you want, again, is you want to take your yellow and your orange, and basically you start to paint upward. So I'll show you what I mean. So now I'm going to take my brush, and it's got the orange on it, and I'm going to paint into the red about an inch. And you see, I'm lightening up. You see how it's fading, and it's causing a gradient. And that's what you want to do for your color. So you're going to do the same thing. You have a little bit of orange on your brush. So you have a little bit of the color, your next color that you're doing. And if you want, you can even, add a little more orange there into the red, but it has to be wet. Your paint has to still be wet for it to do that. You see, I went back. I can even bring a little bit of that red down into my orange, just a little bit if I want to. And my brush is a little bit on the dry side. I just have a little bit of paint. Took a little bit of red onto my brush here and went into my orange. And I'm just kind of almost like shading, right? Shading it in. And you're going to do the same with the yellow. So the key is to, work from the bottom with the pure color. And then you go upward into the color that you want to make the gradient part of. So you want to get that pure color on first. And then we'll go back and we'll add some more of those colors into the sky to make it a little more varied, and we'll add some clouds in there. So here's the yellow. Again, when you're finished with that yellow, I'm going to work some of it into the orange. I'm going to add a little more yellow into my orange to make it kind of a yellowy orange. And you can add some yellow up above if you want. To make it a little bit streakier through your sky. So what I'm doing here, now that we have all the colors on, is I'm now just adding, using the side of my flat brush, just adding a little bit more color into the red and the orange. You can add some white into the yellow as well. But this is where you can either keep using your flat brush, or if you want, you can switch to your round brush to get, some thinner streaks. Um, I'm going to show you that. So just grabbed my round brush and I'm going to add some orange into my red here. See, I'm just making streaks, and then I'm going to blend it and dry off my flat brush, and then I'm just going to blend it just a little bit so that it's kind of streaky in the sky. And you can do that with all the colors. You can, I can even take a little bit of red here, and then our final part with the sky is going to be where we actually create the clouds. So here I'm adding a little bit of red going downward, and then I'm grabbing a little bit of orange to go up in to the red, and I'm kind of dotting it along. Again, I'm using the side of my brush here. I'm going to go a little bit closer in a different direction here. Move this down. There we go. Oh, looks like we have somebody else coming on. Marsha. Hi, Marsha. Let me get you the information in the chat here. Sorry, I just saw you. I, I don't know how long you were there for. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm just going to mute you just because we're recording. So we're using a 9 by 12. If you don't have that size, that's okay. The canvas, and we just really drew the wave and the horizon with our little beach in the background. But we're going to paint that rather than draw the palm trees. We're going to use paint with those. Let me move this up a bit. Fix my camera one more time. There we go. And so, at this stage, you can add a little more yellow into your orange. That's what I'm doing now. So it's just really now, working in some streaks of color into the above color that you created. So again, I just added some yellow into my orange. It's kind of, a little bit thick, and then I take it and I kind of dab it on, and it gives it, it really does give it like a sunset look in the sky. And then we're going to use the white for the clouds. So I'm now taking a little more orange and yellow together and just kind of working it in up towards the red. And a little more yellow. Okay. And I like to use my thinner brush for the clouds because basically, I'm going to show this up close. So we start off with white, and we kind of start off like a line, but then we sort of paint, literally like fluffy round parts on top of those lines. Now you can also do it with this brush where you start off with a line of the white on the bottom, and then at the top you kind of make puffy, you literally kind of draw it with your paintbrush, and then you pounce on it with the white. So I'll show you that. Let me move this down. Okay, so you want to make sure that your brush is dry. And then I'm going to just take just a tiny bit, like the tiniest bit of white. And you're going to decide where you want your clouds. So maybe back here, right? And now I'm going to add a little more on. I'm going to start making it kind of puffy above the line and sometimes a little bit below. I'm kind of like dotting it on, but still remembering, that line is kind of where my cloud kind of like is the bottom of my cloud. Now you can go a little below it, right? But I tend to like to keep the line of the cloud sort of straight across on the bottom. And then you're going to make more clouds like that. You can make, thinner ones. You can add it a little bit thicker of the white in certain spots. And again, if you're a little more comfortable with the other brush, you can use the other brush. Kind of show you what that looks like. That is more, you put it on the tip of your brush. So same thing. This one you just have to kind of, work the brush a little more, um, but that's okay. Add some up here. And you want it to be kind of, a little bit see-through because that's what clouds are. They're not solid. Um, Gonna add a few white spots toward my yellow. Make it a little lighter. And then we're gonna move on to um, our island in the background. Want to make sure to wash your brushes out. And our next step is we're actually going to be using um, our round brush, um, the detail brush, and we're going to be doing, painting our islands. And our islands are orange at first, and then purple, which we're going to be making purple with um, red and blue. So first, we take our thin brush, right, a round brush, and we paint those mountains orange. The one in the back is a little brighter, or I should say on the right side. You can see a little more orange. When you're ready, you're going to be mixing some colors. You're going to be mixing red and blue to make purple. And then next to it, you're going to add a tiny bit of white so that you get lavender. So that's going to be the color of the of your palm, kind of your palm tree leaves. So again, we mix, we have purple. So again, if everybody has purple, that's okay. I'm just mixing mine with red and blue. But if you have purple, grab some purple. And then next to it is going to be like a lavender. So you can just take some white and add that to a little part of your purple right next to it. So I'm doing that now. Mix a little more purple here. We're going to be using purple in the waves as well. So if you want, you can mix, quite a bit. I'm going to switch my brush here and I'm going to mix a little more. That's sort of a dark purple. If I want to lighten it up, I'm going to add a little more red. It's like looking like a plum color, like a dark plum color. And then I'm going to also mix one more to make it a little more reddish purple. You don't have to, but I sometimes I like to have, I think in this one I did do kind of two purples in the sense of just by mixing as I was mixing into the waves. Because the rest of the painting is really the waves. Okay, so we're gonna take, so after, first we paint the the sand, in the background, we paint that orangey. And now we're gonna grab our round brush and we're gonna take a little bit of the purple, just a tiny bit, and we're gonna paint over the orange in the front. Now, what I like to do is I paint a little bit of orange on there. And I kind of make it, streaky because then we're going to go back and paint some more orange on top of the purple so that it kind of blends with it a bit. I like to use streaks like this so that you can still see some of that orange. And then um, we're going to do that in all of them. Remember, there are kind of like two bumps, three altogether, or I should say, kind of like they're kind of like hills. I'm painting them right now to show you that there's sort of three separate ones. And then once I've painted the purple on them, I paint orange into the purple. Kind of has this, muted look to it in the background, which is what we want. The sun is hitting all of that back there. I always get a little darker kind of in the corners of where the landscape kind of melds into the water. So I go back in and I just add some more the purple on top. See how it has like, I don't know if you can tell, it's got lines of, let me, it's kind of purpley, but it's, you can see the orange, or I'm sorry, yeah, the orange underneath. And if you can't, you can always just add some more. So it's a little streaky. Like so. And then we're going to paint our palm trees with that same purple. And first we do the trunks, kind of make them almost um, like a triangular shape, a little bit, kind of like a bent triangle shape. I'm going to go in really close so you can see. Kind of like, these are the curves of the trees. And then at the top, kind of paint like an X. And in the one on the right, I make an X, but I make it really small because that's a little more in the background. And then this is where I use a bit of the lavender. Oops, I'm gonna make a little more lavender here. Mine dried up. And so once you make your X, you just make really tiny. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the tip of my brush and I'm making, oops, that one was a little thick, um, really tiny lines. To make really fine, tiny lines. On that X shape. And you're going to do the same on the one on the right, but make it really, really tiny because that one is a little further away from us. So you have to make sure that you have a pretty good point. And then the other thing, as you're making the leaves, of the palms kind of come out toward the edge, you want to make it a little bit, just a little bit longer, like the leaves a little bit longer. Now, if you're not liking the leaves or you feel like you messed up on them, you can always go back and you can just repaint over them with the sky, wait for it to dry later on, and redo it. We're coming up to, um, our one of our last parts of the painting where we're going to do all of the waves and the water. I like to refresh my water at this point. So if you'd like to do that, you can too. I'll give everyone some more time. I'm going to go in the hallway and just refresh my water. Be right back. Mm. Oops. And so what we're going to be doing with this next part is we're going to start off with our blue, and we're going to be doing a combination of blues. Um, we're going to be using, a basic blue, which is this very vibrant blue. And then we're going to be using purple. We're also going to be using a darker blue than this, and we're going to do that by mixing some black with blue. And then we're also going to be mixing blue and white to get some lighter hues of blue. So the first blue that I like to start off with, though, is this very vibrant basic blue. And we're going to start off first in the background. So right up against um, where our ocean is next to the sunset. And what I like to do is start off by making waves with that color. So you can see I'm kind of doing a scribble kind of with this blue, making sure to stop when I get to the wave that's in front of us. I know it's a little difficult, but we're going to make that, I'll make it kind of squiggly. And when you're done with that, you can then start to take that blue and you're going to start to go in the other part where it's, the big wave. And we're going to add this color as our first blue. And so this first color blue in this part you're going to color it pretty much all blue. Now, does the blue have to be solid? It does not, because we're going to be going back in with the other blues that I mentioned. So as you can see, I'm kind of, creating a bit of, texture, and I'm making the wave curve to the left. You do want to make sure to go across the top of your canvas and make sure you do paint that blue so that you don't have, um, you know, the white of the canvas showing through. I also like to paint the right side of the canvas blue, again, just to make sure that we're getting, all the paint on there. You could also do the bottom as well, almost like you're framing the wave. And then once you have those completed, you can start to paint in the wave, but you can leave the canvas spots of it um, sort of whitish with, you know, you're creating the left or the circular motion of the waves going toward the left where the wave is cresting, but you can leave spots of the canvas, um, kind of white with, some of it painted with your brush in blue. And then we're going to start adding in more colors. So you should sort of have a dark blue wave in front for now. And then in our background, you've got some squiggly blue, dark blue. And we're going to keep that blue on our brush because we're going to add red to it for the purple. So whenever you're ready, and you may have mixed it already, but you're going to add some purple, and it's going to look black on my screen. It's going to look very dark. So here, making wavy, right? More waves in the background, kind of fill in the space. And you're going to start kind of filling in the water. But you're going to start to go a little lighter after you add the purple. You're going to add a lighter blue by mixing some white with the blue. This is how you're going to get all these different colors of blue in your waves. Now, we're only doing the background for right now. I know we started off with adding, that blue in front of us. And we're going to leave that, but for now, we're going to complete the water that's in our background. And this is where you can start to also use your round brush, especially as you get toward the horizon, because it's a little bit more, you want to kind of get it nice and crisp. And so we're near the horizon, I like it to be a little bit lighter blue. So you can see I'm starting to mix all these blues just by adding white to it. We're going to be adding green to this too. So this is me taking the round brush, and I'm adding a little bit of water to my paint. If your paint is not flowing how you would like it, my paint is a little older, so I'm using some water to kind of get flow a little better. And so if you find that you like using your smaller brush to make the waves, you can do that as you've already put down, your main blues. Now it's just working in different waves of blue on top of what you have. And again, right now we're just in the background. Our last part will be doing it, um, the big giant wave in front of us. So this is really just using some lighter, some lighter blues. And we're going to mix some green as well to go in there. And start to add some white on the tip of your brush. You're almost making like snakes, like it's going undulating up and down. I'm going to add a little bit of purple again in some of these waves. You can even add a little bit of red on top of the blue because that's going to be purple too. See, I just added just a little bit of red here. And then you're going to add some green by mixing some yellow and blue if you don't have green. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of yellow and blue. And I'm going to add a little bit of green in those waves. Just a little bit. And then I like to add some white closer to the back of where the sun is, on top of the water, but not exactly on top. I like it to be sort of a little bit against where the water is kind of crashing near there, near the landscape. and then maybe a little bit mixed in to some of the waves that we've already done. Add a few more light blue waves here. And then when you get a chance, getting into the really big wave, I like to start off with light blue to make the other waves. And I only go up to about up here. So because we're going to be adding lots of foam, kind of white foam to the edge. So we don't really need all the colors in that section. And so this one here, this wave is much more um, of two colors, kind of, or maybe three or four, using a lot of kind of white and light blue along with the base of your blue. And again, kind of sweeping motions. So you're using a lot of paint at this point, right? Like it's kind of chunky on your brush. You know, and you're doing big, long sweeps, curvy sweeps of, you know, the wave. And we're going to get lighter, you know, using white as we get toward the actual curved wave part. So this is just, you know, layering on some light blue, some kind of medium light blue. We're going to add the green in here again, and some purple. You know, it's whatever colors, you know, ranging in blue that you want. And also some black mixed with blue, which is going to make a dark blue. I'm doing that on the edge here of this blue. So you can see I've got a lot of blues happening stemming from this blue. This is a dark blue, which I've mixed a little bit of black with my blue. And I like to kind of just take that a little throughout, um, but very lightly so that it doesn't overpower. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my brush and I'm barely touching the canvas. You see how it comes out like that. And I'm going to do that with purple as well because I want more of the lighter colors to shine through on this wave. But I am adding, some of the, a little bit of some dark. So that was just black mixed in with the blue. And then I'm going to add some purple, which again is red and blue, unless you have a purple, and you can use that one. So mix a little more red and blue here. You can even add a little bit of white to it to get a little more of a lavender, which I think I'm going to do that. So what I did was, again, I did red, purple, and then I mixed in a little bit of white to get a little more of like a lighter purple. It's not really a light purple. It's like a kind of a medium purple. And then I'm going to add that color in with all my blues here. And you can keep kind of layering the colors if you don't like, um, if you think it's too dark, you can just go back and add some more light blue or blue. Pretty soon we're going to start adding the white. But first, the next color, you want to add a little bit of green in here. And I like to grab some chunks of white as I'm kind of, um, painting color into the wetness of the paint. So I just grabbed a little bit of some white as well. And I'm just, again, lightly touching that surface. I like to have a little more purplish blue in the corner, the right hand bottom corner of the wave, just because I feel like it's sort of turning. So I make it a little bit darker in that area. And sometimes right at the top as well on the right, add a little more purple there. But I'm about to now add in some of the green. Don't want too much green, but just a little bit. You can even add a little bit white to it if you want to kind of lighten it. So here I am adding some of that. It's like a lime green. It's like yellowy green. And again, just very light touches of it on top of all the other colors. And our final, some of our final steps is we're going to start lightening up using white and light blue, to make the foam. And the foam, I like to start off making the foam kind of in front of us here, using, having the foam be the most foamy, right? The most white going along the edge of where it meets, over the landscape. And you can, again, I like to go back and forth using my flat brush and my smaller brush. See, I'm taking the white, I'm kind of tracing along the inside of the curve of the wave. And we're going to kind of start to dot along it using your flat brush. And you're going to kind of make that a little foamy going into the first part of your wave. And I do that by adding a little bit of white to my brush. And then you can add a little bit of blue even if your paint is not wet anymore. So I kind of make like a kind of a light blue. And then we're going to go back in with really some thick white. But you kind of have to layer like a little bit of a lighter blue as you're going upward. But then we just really use white. And if it's looking a little too weird, you can always go back to just your regular blue, getting that on your brush to kind of even out I'm doing that here, just even out the fluffiness. But then I'm going to use a lot of white again. And using, again, as I mentioned, when you can use your thin brush, your detail brush, for making some kind of squiggle white lines. So you want to kind of make, some, thick white lines as well, but you're kind of dotting them on because it's kind of foamy. And you can do the same as you get up towards the top of the curve of your wave as it's, kind of caressing. Adding a little more blue and white. And some kind of thick white. You can see I'm kind of mostly doing it around kind of the edges. You still want that blue to shine through, and you can start to, create some of that foaminess a little bit off of how we painted um, the wave. And then I like to make it a little bit more pointy on the edge there, using lots of white. And going into a bit of the wave as well, using that kind of foamy pattern here. And then here again, you can just add some light strokes of white in the rest of your wave. And you can still do it in the other part too. And here again, you can play with a little more color. If you want to add a little bit of purple at this point over here, you can do that. And add just a little bit here using my um, thin brush, just a little bit as it's kind of caressing around here. But other than that, I kind of like it. Maybe I'll add a little more um, white using, again, it would get really foamy, but also, you would see some white from that foam, chunky white here. Like that. I did this painting with one group of kids too. Somebody, I just thought of this. One of the kids made a little surfer guy, like right here. So funny. Only a kid would think that. This little surfer, silhouette. That's great. Sometimes I feel like if only our minds could revert back to being more kid-like, it would be so much less stressed, right? Ah, I can't wait to see what these look like. I'm gonna remove my spotlights. And I think I'm gonna stop the recording.